We cashed our big Christmas Eve parlay. So here, Dalvin Cook pushed. This was a 5 leg parlay. So he pushed. He had exactly 3 receptions. 5 leg parlay becomes 4 legs. And we turned, I believe it was $750 into 7.5K. So pretty big payout. And I have a bunch more plays today that we're going to be going through. This one I gave out yesterday. Pat Beverly, under 4 rebounds. Jaw over 6.5. Dinwiddie over 4.5. And what we're going to be doing is going through a bunch more plays on Underdog Fantasy as well as Prize Picks. So a common question I get is like, should I get both platforms? And we'll answer that question right away. Yes. So the first play I have is Michael Porter over 5 rebounds on Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you go to right here, if you go to Prize Picks, you'll see his line is at 5.5. Underdog Fantasy has him at 5. Prize Picks at 5.5. So the difference between 5 and 5.5, it may seem small, but it's actually really big, right? If Porter gets exactly 5 rebounds, then we are going to push on Underdog Fantasy. We would lose our bet on Prize Picks. So if you think about our play from yesterday, kind of as a simple example, this 5-pick entry, Prize Picks had Cook's line at 2.5 receptions. So if I actually just go to my previous entry, if I go right here, you'll see this play one, I had Cook over 2.5 receptions right here on Underdog Fantasy. Or I apologize, on Prize Picks, I had Cook over 2.5 receptions. And then on Underdog Fantasy, I had under 3. So one bet pushed, and I still won this parlay. And then this 6-pick flex, we won Cook over 2.5. So these differences really matter, right? Like the probability that Porter gets exactly 5 rebounds isn't small. So being able to pick up these spots with value is really important. So what I like to do oftentimes is just use this odds jam screen, and you can see, wow, lines are on the move in some of these games. I'm not sure if some players got injured or something like that. But if we go down to Porter once again, which you can see right here, so all of the sports books have his line at 5.5 boards. Underdog has him at 5. Prize Picks is at 5.5. Underdog is at 5. All the sports books are at 5.5. So clearly it seems like Underdog's a little too low. Like they're at 5. The rest of the market's at 5.5. So this is a spot with value, right? This is a play I want to lock in. So when I'm using this odds jam screen, I'm typically looking for where do books have the line set at different levels. Like here it's like Aaron Gordon, everyone's at 6.5. Doesn't seem like there's value, right? All these books are just going to take their vig, take their spread. There's really no value in the market. DeAndre Ayton, all the books are at 9.5. Doesn't seem like there's any value out there. The only one where looking at the screen, it becomes very clear is Porter. It's like, whoa, no book is even giving us plus money on over 5.5. And we can get over 5 on Underdog Fantasy, where we're going to push if he has exactly 5 boards and everyone else who loses. Literally, anyone who places their bet on a sports book betting Porter over in rebounds is going to lose. Anyone who bets on Prize Picks is going to lose if he has exactly 5 boards. We're going to push. And those things are very impactful in the long run, right? Like if I would have had Cook under 2.5, I wouldn't have had this 15K win. I would have had a 0 burger, right? So these differences, hunting for value, it may seem like, he's probably not going to have exactly 5. It really matters in the long run, even if he's only having 5 boards, like 20% of the time. In the long run, that really matters. So that's the first play I locked in, and I can kind of give you another example right here in player reception. So NFL, you can see right here. Here it is. So you can see Raheem, his line on Underdog is 2. On Prize Picks, it's 1.5. So that's another big jump, right? The probability that Raheem, he's not going to have 20 receptions. It's probably going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. Like the distribution is centered around a very low number. So this would be another middling opportunity. You could take Raheem over on Prize Picks. You could take him under on Underdog Fantasy, and you would have a nice little middle where if he has exactly 2 receptions, then you'll get exactly what happened yesterday. You're going to win the over. You're going to push the under on Underdog Fantasy. It's incredible. So that's what I went with first. Now, I say this all the time, but there's a lot of ways to find value. So the screen is really cool. It's really useful. It highlights line movements, but you can also just browse odds in this classical way for free on OddsJam. Any sport you want to look at, any game that you want to look at. So there's a fair amount of NBA today. Any market you want to look at, you can browse odds completely for free and just kind of hunt through the market and look for value. Try to see where sports books are set at different levels. And this is kind of like the most basic concept in sports betting. It's, line shopping, finding value. All these sports books, they set lines independently. So you want to make sure you're getting the best odds. I mean, it's kind of like if you could buy Bitcoin at $5, $10, $15, or $20, you want to buy it at $5, right? So if you want to bet Aaron Gordon over 6.5 rebounds, you should be placing that bet looking at the odds, if we go back down, at plus 100 on FanDuel. FanDuel's offering the best price. If you want to take him under 6.5 boards, you should be getting him on Prize Picks. So this is called line shopping. And again, just like the Michael Porter example, it may not seem like 5 versus 5.5, plus 100 versus minus 110 is a big deal. Plus 120 versus, or plus 108 versus plus 138, plus 105 versus plus 138 for Torrey Craig over 5.5 rebounds. But over the course of the long run, really makes a difference. As a sharp bettor, I don't win every day. Like, I give out a lot of plays on Twitter. I try to keep it, real and just say these things like you're not going to win every day when you're talking about, kind of like your net profit. You will have losing streaks, but if you're finding value, if your plays have an edge, you win in the long run. It's kind of like the same way, if you go to a casino and you play roulette and you win, the casino's like, well, we know roulette is impossible to beat. You literally can't beat roulette. It's impossible. There's no strategy, no amount of math to beat roulette. So the casino knows, okay, he may have won this hand, but we know we're going to win in the long run. So it's all about that long-term value. And you can hunt around the market, look for value. And another tool I like to use is this positive EV tool, where I have a lot of plays, right? So I actually went with Raheem over 1.5 receptions. I took Murray over 3.5 rebounds. So you can see right here, why do we like Murray over 3.5 rebounds? So all of the books have this juiced from minus 140 on DraftKings to minus 154, minus 157 on Barstool, actually. So there's a little disagreement in the market. Obviously, Barstool has the over a bit more favored for Murray than FanDuel and Caesars and DraftKings. But again, all these books want to set lines independently. So we kind of like treat them all as independent data points of where the line should be set. And we look for value, right? That's what the positive EV tool does. It just points out value, points out discrepancies in prices. There's no BS. There's nothing about sports. So you can look for value manually, but what this EV tool does is it just kind of like goes to Prize Picks. It scans every line, goes to Underdog Fantasy. If we go back here, like here where the initial entry I went in, it scans all the lines on Underdog Fantasy. And then it just shows you where the highest profit margin plays are in your location. So if you're in Arizona, you can select all the sports books or just the ones you use, and it points out the value. And you should have more sports books. Like, I don't mean to say I'm only using 4 because you should. I mean, some I'm limited on. I'm actually in Virginia right now, so some of these sports books I don't even have available. But like, more sports books is better. You never know where the value is going to be on a given day. Just like an investor may be focused on the tech industry, then the cannabis industry, like where is the value? Here, there's value on Caesars for Embiid points. There's not value on Prize Picks for Embiid points. Here, there's value on Jamal Murray rebounds on Prize Picks at that price. We saw that the value on, if we go back here, the profitable play on Michael Porter was over 5 rebounds on Underdog Fantasy. This play's not on Prize Picks. It's over 5.5 rebounds. That's a different bet. They're not graded the same way, right? If Porter has 5 rebounds, this pushes. Prize Picks would lose if you had over 5.5. They're not the same bet. So, you have to consider those things. But what the EV tool does is it doesn't, the screen is useful because it makes it easier to see 5 versus 5.5, like see lines set at different levels. What the EV tool does is it compares apples and apples, right? Jamal Murray, over 3.5 rebounds. All the prices, all the books have his line at 3.5 boards. There's no discrepancy, in how this is graded. If he has 4 or more rebounds, this bet will win. On DraftKings, FanDuel, so it's crazy because it's the exact same bet. It's graded in the same way. It's the same asset. It's literally like having hundreds of different prices of a stock. BetMGM's telling us this is worth 145, FanDuel 154, DraftKings 140. So all these sports books, they have their own models. They invest hundreds of millions of dollars into. They have their own, actions coming in, supply and demand, and they're moving around lines to keep the market in check. Supply and demand, just like the price of a stock goes up. If everyone bets on Murray rebounds, the line's going to go from minus 154 to minus 200 if everyone keeps pounding the over. Supply and demand, right? This market is based on supply and demand. The opinions of every sports bettor are reflected in the odds. Like in the same way, the price of a stock is the, point where supply and demand is equal. So if everyone comes in wanting to buy a stock, the price will go up because demand is greater than supply until it's like, a fair, until it reaches fair market value where buying and selling is equal. And people believe that's the fair price. It's no different in sports betting. If everyone pounded Murray over 3.5 rebounds, the line would move from minus 150 to minus 170, etc. So what we're essentially doing is saying, okay, based on all the sports books, which are more sophisticated than Prize Picks, some little fantasy company, they're all telling us this line should be set minus 140 to minus 154. There's clear value on Prize Picks. In the same way, like an investor, looks for value, looks for an edge, not different on Prize Picks. It's not different in sports betting. You want to look for value, you want to find an edge. And, I don't trust my gut because that's just not me. I took Murray over 3.5. I took Raheem over 1.5. I took, some of these other plays as well. So you can see right here, we have Ja over 6.5 rebounds, Giannis to make a 3, Schroeder over 3.5 assists. A lot of these plays you can see right here, just again, straight data. Now, one thing you may be wondering is like, oh, why didn't you include Chris Paul over 3.5 rebounds? Or here's a better example. Why didn't you include Murray over 3.5 rebounds and Desmond Bane, Murray over 3.5 rebounds and Chris Paul over 3.5 rebounds? So the reason I didn't do that is like these people are competing for rebounds. So there may be a little bit of correlation because it's the same game. So that is something you need to consider, when you're betting, is if you take a player passing yards over, right? A player receiving yards over from the same team, those things probably have some positive correlation. If Devontae Adams goes over in receiving yards, then Derek Carr is more likely to go over in passing yards, right? So typically I try, unless they're very clearly uncorrelated, to take plays from different games. So I went with a Prize Pick 6-pick flex play, minus 119 implied odds. 6 different picks here. We have Ja over in rebounds, Giannis to make a 3. Again, these plays, just following the data. I'm following the math. I'm following the market. There's none of my gut. There's no BS, right? It's following value because the market, these sportsbooks invest hundreds of millions of dollars in their ability to set lines, and they're taking bets from millions of people betting on the NBA and NFL. They know where the odds should be more than me. My only chance of beating them, and the easiest way to beat them, is right, you look through the market and you hunt for these rare few betting opportunities where Prize Picks is slipping up and giving you so much value that you can actually beat their vig, beat their juice, beat the spread that they bake in, this minus 119 juice, where you have to bet 119 to win back 100 on both the over and the under. Right? So we're not looking, like I don't need to bet on every player. I just need, I want to go with a 5 or 6 pick flex on Prize Picks. I need there to be 6 profitable plays. And here are the 6 I found. So what else do I have? Finally, there's some other plays I have. I have Giannis under 5 assists, a bunch of other plays, but regardless, let's make some money, guys.